Ladies and gentlemen, the year is 2022, the month is October, and we have never truly had such an incredible generation of young, talented chess players. We have never had such a generation of young talents who every day basically outdo one another on their quest to glory, which is being the best chess player in the world. Well, today, we have an update to that ranking list, to all of those accomplishments, and we once again have a story of Magnus Carlsen taking on one of the brightest talents out of India, Gukesh Domaraju. I did a podcast with Gukesh a couple of months ago. Gukesh was the one that was on a 100% perfect score at the Olympiad for nearly 10 rounds. It was actually just one of the most incredible individual results. And today they played in an online rapid event. And also Magnus played against another Indian teenager, Arjun Erigaisi. I will be making a separate video about that game probably in a day or two. So don't tell me in the comments, hey, he played that game too. I know. And remember that a few months ago, Pragnananda from India also defeated Magnus, not just in one game, but in a head-to-head match. So a lot of these guys they smell some of that blood in the water, and they are fearless. They play amazing chess, and they win in a variety of different ways. So let's analyze the game today. Every time an Indian teenager plays a very good game against Magnus, it becomes a sensation across all of India, the news outlets, the TV stations, the athletes. Some of the best athletes of India also chime in. So Gukesh plays the move e4, and Magnus, for like the 20th time in his illustrious career out of hundreds of thousands of games, plays the French defense. That's one of the cool things about a lot of this online chess boom stuff, is that we see the top players playing openings and playing just really like various systems that under normal circumstances, they might not be playing so much, okay? Gukesh plays d4. That's not to say the French is like bad or something, because, you know, sometimes you say, oh, well, the world champion doesn't play my opening. That means my opening is bad. No, that just means that the meta at that level is not to do that. For example, I used to like Overwatch a lot. I don't play Overwatch or Overwatch 2 anymore, but I used to play Hamster all the time. I was a rolling ball, basically. That, nobody plays that. You got to play like Ryan Zaria or whatever. So, Gukesh plays the classical French, and Magnus does not play d takes c4, the Rubinstein variation, or the Fort Knox. All of these are real names. I promise I'm not making them up. He does not play the Winnower, which is bishop b4. He plays the classical. This is the classical French attacking the pawn on e4. Here, white has two lines, pushing and also pinning. This is a very aggressive line. There's many, many things for black here. The McCutcheon variation, the Byrne variation, just kind of the classical bishop e7 line. And then here there's a very interesting gambit with h4. This is the Aljochin Chatard attack. But none of that happens. e5, this is the classical line, and white basically builds up this massive center. Now white wants to play knight f3 and bishop to e3, and if it's not clear from this space advantage, white at some point would like to attack black over here. Black is going to use all of this, build up the pieces behind the pawns, and launch a counterattack. That's why we see c5 and knight c6, very natural. White develops the bishop, and here black has several developmental schemes and plans. Black can actually already begin taking in the center, and then developing after this exchange to that c5 square, putting something on b6. In many variations, black can also put a queen on b6, which would immediately attack the pawn on b2. You can also do cd4, knight d4, and then queen b6, so kind of a combination of these ideas. You can play b6, a6. Magnus plays the most common move by far, which is the move a6. The move a6 has only one idea in mind, and that is to play b5. You just want to get a head start on that queenside counterplay, because if you don't, white will go here, here, and castle either direction, and then start, firing these pawns forward. Because in chess, when you have a dominant space advantage and sufficient defense behind that space advantage, that's a recipe for a victory. So we have queen to d2, just generally supporting everything important, b5, and now that white sort of sees that castling this way will probably lead to very bad things, in fact, it just straight up loses the game. You're not going to do puzzle battle, you're gonna just lose the game here. White is just gonna say, oh, okay, you want to attack me? Well, I'm going to poke a hole in your attack. And just so you understand like how quickly this can go from bad to worse, just a couple of bad moves like this, b4, right? You come back. Black is already playing queen a5, and you just cannot defend your king just at all. So pawns like this encroaching on your space, very, very bad news. It can go from bad to worse to just dead lost very fast. So we have a big trade and bishop d3. Now, despite 11 moves being played by both parties, We are still in a position that has been reached tens of thousands of times, because this is something in chess that we like to call the main line. Okay, the number one most common thing that is played by the best players. Because if you look at any sort of database of games, if it's beginners, you're not going to get to this position, right? Moves to beginners do not look the same as moves to the best players in the world. We got to trust the best players in the world, all right? And basically, once again, if white castles, white's king is directly in the line of assault over here. If white castles this way, then you're in the direct line of assault over here. So white can't really castle right now, okay? Since white cannot castle, white needs to fight back against this queen with this move queen to f2. Black could play knight takes bishop, but that knight is actually very strong, and this exchange only benefits white. This is an endgame that is known to be better for white. Why? How do you know that? What makes an endgame better for white? Well, endgames are decided, first of all, by material, second of all, by activity of the pieces and long-term prospects in terms of weaknesses and play. You look at this bishop, you do a piece-by-piece comparison. When you have 6 out of your 7 pawns on the same color square as your bishop, which black does have here, black is going to struggle. That light-squared bishop is not going to be seeing the light of day anytime soon. It is known as the French bishop, and on move 1, literally, when you play e6, you understand that this bishop is going to have a very tough time in this world. So, that is sort of the meta behind this game plan. Black does have a good attacking position, but white prevents the attack. And now black is sort of forced to play other moves. Here, the move bishop d7 scores very well for black. There's like a lot of lines where that scores well. But instead of that, Magnus pushes Gukesh's knight backwards to e2 and then continues with the attack a5. Once again, it's just simply way too dangerous to castle at this point. First of all, it loses to various tactics. And second of all, you see that black is making it very clear he is planning to attack you. So if you know your king is going to get attacked if you go one way, what do? You go the other way, right? You now see this queen, you pin the knight to the queen, the knight can't move, and now black plays the move bishop to a6. So this position has been reached several hundreds of times before. Here, black is attacking this bishop, and the most common move in the position is rook d1, or rook d1 this way. Both rooks can go to d1, and the position remains sort of in the balance. Gukesh here plays a move that has been played before, and it basically completely disregards the attack on this bishop, f5. What? Let me explain why that's a weird move. Because the idea is, I mean, it's very clear what white wants, right? White wants to go for this king. But after e takes f5, white actually can't do this. Why? Because I take, and now the queen sees the king. That is a very big problem, because I will go here and win the rook while you are distracted dealing with check. So if e takes f5, bishop f5 is not possible. What the heck does Gukesh want? Gukesh wants to demolish the world champion and take his soul by playing the move knight to f4. All right, time to sit up in my chair. It is time for some of that patented signature Gotham commentary that you come here for. And if you've never been here before or you're new, welcome to the channel. This is what we're all about. Gukesh does something called a clearance sacrifice, removing a piece from a square to put his own piece on that square, a better one, and now creating some problems for the black position. Black has a couple of choices here. Does he defend against the incoming horsey assault, or does he ignore it? He chooses to retreat the knight, very comfortably defending both of those pawns, and says, Gukesh, you're strong, but you're in over your head. You don't know what you're getting yourself into here. Back up while you still can. Gukesh says, back up. I don't know the meaning of the damn word, not to mention I am a subscriber of GothamChess on YouTube. Hopefully not, by the way, because he would never be this good at chess if he was. But Gotham always says that 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, going backwards is not going to be the right move. E6. E6 is a fascinating pawn sacrifice. Yes, Magnus can take this. But then there would be knight e6. And you cannot take because you would lose your queen. If you do this, I am laser beaming you down the e-file right after I gobble your knight and I create some problems for your position. So e6, Magnus is forced to play f6, the best move. The pawn is passing but blockaded. The squares are occupied for the white pieces. Rook a c1. a very interesting move, but probably a flawed one. The idea of this move is designed to start breaking out of the position. Magnus here analyzes and castles his king out of the center, and now Gukesh is like, wait a minute, my position is not so good. I'm down a pawn, and I'm in over my head indeed. What do you do when you're worse and you're playing the greatest chess player of all time? Arguably, I still think it's Kasparov by a tiny bit, but it could very well be Magnus. What do you do when a position is probably losing for you? You can sit back and defend it stoutly. You could roll over and die. Gukesh says option number 3, which is create chaos on the 64 squares, c3. That is a fascinating move because it completely leaves the bishop out to dry, but remember, the knight cannot actually take. The knight is a phantom attacker. Okay, the idea is then to activate the rook. Queen d6. Now the knight is unpinned. This is hanging, and this is hanging. So Gukesh has to take. All right, we have rook takes a6, and now he takes on b4. Activating the rook, the knight is now in the line of sight here, but the queen still attacks this. Now, basically, from this point forward, these two got into the chess equivalent of the highest level kickboxing match. I'm talking Adesanya versus Pereira, which is coming up in the UFC. Super high level, ducking, feints, jabs, kicks, punches. All right, beautiful distance management. Watch this. Queen slides out, bishop takes bishop, best move. All right, rook takes bishop, one of the best moves. You could take with the knight as well. Pawn takes pawn. Now, of course, if this, the knight falls, right? But if this, then I'm going to take and my pawn is going to run away. So Magnus finds the best move, knight to e4, ignoring the pawn for now. Attacking the queen. The queen has to guard this hanging knight. Now I take back over here. Magnus remains one pawn up, and he's about to come in and get 2 more. Gukesh is like, what do I do? I don't want to play this ugly defensive move, okay? Because then Magnus is going to start firing haymakers. So what do? To hell with the pawn. Rook takes a2, you can have it. 2 pawns up for the world champ. Now Gukesh is like, I can't just sit here. I got nothing else. I got to go for the attack, knight to b5. All right? Attacks the queen on d6. Magnus can go all the way back, monitoring this, hitting this, and then knight c7, rook a5. Caging in the horse, okay? Not allowing it to get out of the stable. You came in too far. Now your hoof is trapped, okay? So we back up. Instead of that, Magnus plays queen e5, okay? But now suddenly comes rook c7, which attacks the knight on e7 and simultaneously makes it really difficult to move the queen. The queen is not quite trapped, but it's really close. Now, here's the thing about this position. You have the advantage here of knowing that it's -3, right? I mean, it's been -2. Black has had an advantage, but that makes sense because Black has had 2 pawns. Each one of those pawns is worth 1 point, so naturally Black has a 2.0 advantage. But now it's -3. Why is that? Well, apparently this move is incorrect. There is an idea behind the move rook to c7. The point is that if the knight is defended versus moved, there is a huge difference between the two, okay? Magnus now has that choice. He has to either guard his knight, activating his rook a little bit, or move his knight. Now, I think Magnus did not move his knight because he was a little bit concerned that, let's say after something like knight d3, queen e6, knight d4, oh my goodness, you kind of opened up yourself to a huge attack, right? That's what I think Magnus was worried about the move knight g6. Now, I don't know. I haven't spoken to Magnus. I might. Probably won't respond. It'll be a very one-way conversation. But there's a way here for Black to utilize danger levels. My queen is hanging? Oh, but now your queen is hanging too. And White has a very unpleasant choice. Play queen to d4 and lose the knight. Okay. Take here and lose this. Or just, bail all the way back to e1 and still lose the knight. So, knight g6 for Magnus would have probably won the game. Probably. Okay? But Magnus makes it an accuracy. He plays the move rook to e8. And now, as you're probably seeing from the eval bar, you're going, yes, Gukesh is winning! Or no, Gukesh is winning, depending on who you're cheering for. What is the difference between the two moves? I don't understand. Well, the difference apparently between the two moves is the move queen to b6. What? What is so significant about that queen move? Like, the way you compare variations, well, what would have happened if queen b6 would have happened here, right? Well, knight takes f4. White would have had to deal with the demands of the position. White would not have been able to just go, the queen could have just flown out, done whatever she wanted. Queen's got responsibilities, all right? I'm sorry, I've been watching House of the Dragon. I never really got into Game of Thrones, but Lucy got me into House of the Dragon. A new episode tonight, by the way. So the difference is that the queen flies out over to b6, but what the heck is the point? And Gukesh finds it, by the way. That's the thing about these young players. You give them one chance, they take it. What is so good about this? What's so good about this is that the queen is threatening to win the game on the spot. What? White is now threatening the move. Rook takes e7. And after rook e7, queen d8 is mate. But there is something, well, you give up the rook and then it's checkmate. But there is something even more evil. Do you remember how I said over here that it looks like the queen is trapped, but the queen can take the pawn? The queen was trapped almost. There was this, but the queen is no squares. Well, the whole idea of this rook c7 move by Gukesh was to set a trap around the black queen. The queen can now no longer take the pawn. There are two threats in this position. They are the absolute devastation of one of the black monarchs, and the other one is trapped in the center of the board, and there is nothing Magnus can do. Gukesh, from the depths of defeat, the jaws of a loss, snatches a nasty trap and a victory. There is no defense. If you defend by going back and guarding against rook e7, I simply trap your queen. And the craziest part is if you play a move like d4 to try to prevent knight d3, then I just do this, and it's even worse because I'm going to your back rank. Queen to b6, knight goes back to g5. He executes this one. The rook goes over here. Queen jumps into c7. The threat of a queen trade, the threat of a demolition on the king, check. And Gukesh ends the game as Magnus Carlsen resigns by simply sliding his king gently to the corner of the board, facing the incoming devastation of the g7 pawn and the king on g8, the loss of a very important knight in his position. Only a 1-point material imbalance between the two sides, but Magnus Carlsen resigns to another Indian teenage chess prodigy. The future of chess is very bright among all the young players of the world, but it shines no brighter than it does in India. Gukesh now joins a very elite but somehow rapidly expanding club of young Indian talents that are stunning Magnus Carlsen in chess games. Now, of course, there will be criticism. It wasn't a convincing win from start to finish. No, maybe it was not. But it was a confrontational game which showed a competitive disrespect. I'm not saying he disrespected Magnus, but I'm saying he didn't show respect for the title. He didn't show respect for the rating or the stature. He went after Magnus Carlsen. He sacrificed pawns against Magnus Carlsen. And when it looked at its darkest hour, Gukesh turned the game in the span of one move, and he won the game 3 moves later. Simply incredible stuff. He should be proud, and he should be ready for their next matchup. I will see you all in my next recap video of Magnus taking on a young Indian teenager very soon. Until then, get out of here.